Everyone says parenthood is sacrifice and identity loss. But as a mother and a neuroscientist, I can tell you the exact opposite happened to me. Pregnancy is the closest thing to a second puberty your adult brain ever gets. And there's actually a scientific name for what happened to my brain and yours too if you are a mother. And I'll give it to you at the end, along with the paper that proves it. And so in this video, I will give you 7 ways that becoming a mother actually made me a better person. And well, yeah, none of them are about the kid. Well, number 1 started in a hospital bed with a form I had to sign that you only see sometimes in movies. And you might think I am exaggerating, but this happens way more often than people realize. Pregnancy is quite a risky business, and it relies on 100 things going right. And the moment one thing goes wrong, well, you are in serious problems. And now, I did not come face to face with that as such, as I live in a first world country and healthcare is quite top notch. But I did have to sit with the question, what if? And I had to take a decision that didn't quite favor my health. However, luckily, it did not go down that path. And so with this decision in mind, you go into surgery. And hours earlier, I had walked to the hospital. Okay, admittedly, I couldn't walk, but I waddled. And after birth, I couldn't lift myself out of bed, needing the nurses to take care of my outer shell that I call body. And for 2 whole days, I genuinely believed that this was it, that my life from now on was confined to a bed. And I sound actually like a drama queen, but actually I spoke to other mothers who undergone a cesarean and they had the same thought, because this stark contrast between walked in fine and can't sit up, this is what wakes you up. You stop taking for granted the absolute basics, to be alive and to be healthy, and well, hell, just to stand up. And there is research showing that brushing up against your own mortality changes how your prefrontal cortex weighs decisions. You stop optimizing for status and you start optimizing for meaning. And yeah, I didn't read this paper before the surgery. My brain did the math on its own. So I think the part that changed my perspective was when I had completely healed and there was no pain anywhere in my body, because I knew that my, well, health at any point was a few seconds away from being taken away. And I had realized I had won this round, but if there's a round to be won, well, there's a round that can be lost. And that lands you straight into upgrade, well, number 2. So, well, number 2 happened at around 4 a.m. A newborn just a meter away. And it's the question that started this entire YouTube channel. So for my entire adult life, intelligent was my whole identity. The first thing I'd say about myself was that I had a bachelor, master's, PhD, whatever postdoc papers, neuroscience. And well, as you can see, the whole prestige stack. And all very brainy, all screaming, I am smart, please validate me. And then maternity leave happened. So I am based in Germany and I got almost a year out of work, which I am grateful for, because this gives time for your body and brain to catch up with your new reality. And it gives you precious time to be there for the little one and without stressing about the day job. So once the surgery pain faded and I got into a rhythm, I had this weird new thing called, well, free time. Now, okay, don't go crazy here. There were days where I had to decide if I eat or shower, but particularly at around 4 a.m., I would wake up for the feed, and I quickly figured out that if I went back to sleep, waking up 3 hours later made me more tired than if I just stayed up. So I started filling those 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. hours. Well, first with usual suspects, like TV shows. And then, after finishing watching The Rookie, I couldn't find it in me anymore to watch more. Then, I started to organize my days. I learned, well, Notion, took care of finances, and then one morning I ran out of tasks. And the question came, who is Yvette if Yvette is not in the lab? Am I still a neuroscientist? Am I just a mother? And yes, but is that all? And honestly, I had a full identity conflict at 4 a.m. with a sleeping baby a meter away. And in this moment, something was happening in my brain. There is a network called the default mode network. It is one that runs your self-narrative, the story you tell about who you are. And major life transitions like this one reorganize it. So in such cases, you are having an identity crisis because the life that sustained your identity is not there. And your brain is remodeling the part of it that makes identity to make sense of your new reality. And yeah, hearing this, you might think, oh my God, this is horrible. However, I would say it is rather uncomfortable because you're forced to rebuild yourself by reflecting on who you are and what you like without factoring in the psychology that comes hand in hand with a day job. And I think this is something most adults never get the chance to do. So I decided that the 4 a.m. block would not be spent on, motherhood, because that already had the rest of my day. But this time block would be spent on a project that was about just that. Long story short, the project was this YouTube channel. The early videos are quite unpolished about whatever came to my mind, but I loved them because they were the gateway to finding what I like, and this whole thing gave me a project which, was all mine. And you might be laughing at this comment, but as a new mother, there is almost, nothing that is completely yours. Not even your body. So having your own project, that was, revolutionary for me at the time. And I felt that my mind came alive in those 2 hours. Motherhood, especially in the early days, is tiring and physically takes up all of your time. But mentally, it leaves you free. And I felt that mental free space with a YouTube channel. So at 4 a.m., I realized that I am a mother, but not only that. I am still a neuroscientist and I didn't need a lab to claim that. And for the 4 a.m. slot, I was just a person working on a project that, was all mine. And I'm grateful that I have discovered this. And look, to be honest, you do not need to go this drastic and have a kid to rewire your brain. You can actually do this in the peace of your own home, in your pajamas, with a coffee in hand. And for this, I built a free brain rewiring starter quiz. It takes about, 2 minutes, and it tells you exactly where on the brain rewiring path you should start. Because the "who am I now" question, you don't need a baby to ask it. You can ask it on a regular Tuesday. I guess I just have a flair for the dramatic. And the link will be in the description. But rebuilding yourself requires giving up something most adults are completely addicted to. And it's the next upgrade. Number 3 is a compliment I started to actively hate hearing. And you probably love receiving it. The word is potential. And you might think this is bad to lose. However, I don't. At least not at my age. At my age, you should stop having potential and start having evidence. Because potential, what is it really? At least in my opinion, it's a road you haven't traveled and skills you haven't fully developed. It's the promise that there is more of you to become. And when you are young, that's beautiful, right? But past a certain age, so I started asking myself, what is this potential of mine? And why exactly haven't I used it yet? Dying with potential is sad. It means you could have contributed something significant to the world and you didn't. You kept it to yourself and you held on to it like it needs protection, while all it needed was to share it. And let me tell you this, walking the path of potential is so much harder than being told you have it. Because the moment you start, you realize an uncomfortable truth, that you are not as polished as you thought you were. You start to see every single skill you don't have, and all the gaps, and everything you need to learn, and all the places you are not yet good enough. Therefore, once you commit to actually using your potential instead of hoarding it like a savings account, you immediately run into a brutal constraint. The same one every parent learns the hard way. And number 4 reminds me a lot of a video from Nas Daily that I had completely dismissed in my 20s, and now it lives rent-free in my head. Before having a kid, time felt infinite. I always had the next year. If I didn't do something, no problem, I would do it eventually, because I had time. And then mortality showed up, and then a baby showed up, and then I realized, if I do not manage today, tomorrow doesn't actually look bright either. So time went from being infinite to being finite overnight. And now here's the Nas Daily line. So in this video, he said that he didn't go out drinking and partying with friends, because when he did, he paid for it with time. Not just the night itself, but the entire next day, because you wake up late and hungover. And in my early 20s, I heard this and thought, oh bro, take a chill pill. But now I get exactly what he was trying to say. And actually, there is even a neuroscience angle here. So your prefrontal cortex weighs short-term versus long-term rewards. And that weighing actually shifts when your time horizon shrinks. So caregiving demands and mortality awareness both push the same lever. I stopped taking the future for granted. And this realization can be, negative. If you don't know what you want, the feeling that time is running out becomes pure anxiety. But once you figure that out, at least the first few steps, it collapses into a laser focus. Because you know that if you waste this hour, you do not get it back. But if time is finite, the question becomes obvious. Well, finite for what exactly? My kid is the most ruthless accountability buddy I have ever had. And he was this for me before he could even talk. So if you're a millennial like me, to be honest, I have, no idea what kind of world my kid is going to inherit. There is so much uncertainty. The future does not look exactly bright from here. And before having the kid, I would spiral into pure doom, thinking this, or just ignore it completely. Now, I catch myself asking a different question. What can I actually do? Do I need to wait for somebody else to fix this? Or is there something I can do today? And look, if you have $1 billion, you can buy forest land to keep it from being bulldozed, like this guy here did. But most of us cannot. But we can change ourselves, and we can change our surroundings. And we can also change our own actions. And then the world around us starts to shift as a result. So if you don't fit into your favorite dresses anymore, then it's time to plan an actual exercise routine and a healthy lifestyle. Tired of a job that doesn't align with who you are now? Well, you can complain about it for the next 10 years and do nothing about it. Or you can actively change careers. And the second option is always, harder. It also gives you the most satisfaction. And here's the accountability part. Every single time I see my son, the question that hits me is, am I the best version of myself for him? Will the world, at least his world, be even slightly better because of how I am living? But being the best version of yourself for your kid requires meeting the kid you once were. Number 6 is one that I wasn't expecting. So my son started unlocking memories I had completely forgotten about. So kids make you somehow aware or very aware of your inner child. Out of nowhere, a forgotten memory comes back, and somehow a habit of yours, somehow something clicks. And now you remember where it came from. And just to be clear, this is not about adding another thing to the list of how your parents failed you. I genuinely think our parents did the best they could with what they had. I'm sure my son, when he grows up, will find his own list of how I failed him. My hope is that he has a shorter one, because all parents try to improve on the previous generation. But anyway, when you take care of a tiny human, you start parenting your inner child too. I became aware of subconscious scripts I had been running since I was probably 5 years old or younger. And these scripts I had literally never questioned. I picked up a child psychology book, so it was called, The Whole Brain Child. And suddenly so much of my own wiring made sense. There's also neuroscience behind this too. Becoming a caregiver reactivates the brain networks that store and recontextualize autobiographical memory. In this context, your brain is reopening the file, and you get the chance to make sense of things that a child's brain had no way of wrapping its head around. But while you're meeting your inner child again, something even stranger starts happening. You start meeting the entire world the way kids do. Sometimes I had forgotten how to smell the roses, so to speak. And then a 6-month-old had to teach me. So before having a kid, I was deep in the rat race, running on the hamster wheel, always feeling I wasn't doing enough, and always treating small things as a, waste of time. And then, a newborn happens. And in the first months, the entire pace of the outside world has to slow down to match the pace of this tiny human. And the beauty of this is that you don't have a choice. You have to step off the wheel, no matter what. And then something else happens. You start looking at the world, through their eyes. You see how they notice a flower, or how they actually laugh at the sound of you clattering some dishes. And they invite you to dance, to sing, to perform little routines you would have found ridiculous before. And suddenly you remember that, play exists. And I find that with adulthood I had become very two-dimensional. And having a kid broadened the lens. The world went from grey to full color. And these 7 upgrades I just gave you are not 7 separate stories. There is one single mechanism behind all of them. And it actually has a name. And it is called Matrescence. And unlike adolescence, which everyone talks about, which has a whole shelf in the bookstore, almost nobody talks about matrescence, even though the brain changes are just as dramatic. Your gray matter literally reorganizes when you become a mother, and it stays that way for at least 2 years after birth. Having a kid did turn my world upside down. However, it just took off a distorted lens I didn't know I was wearing. You start having more boundaries, you start wasting less of your life. And you start prioritizing yourself because there is no other option. And honestly, in my experience, that is the best brain rewire starter you can come across. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all you will get are smiling babies, because being a parent is hard and it will push your limits both physically and mentally. But somehow I decided to turn this experience as an upgrade to my previous self. And if you happen to be in the same experience, well, let me know how it's going for you. And at least for me, the upgrade is that, well, you finally become you. And as promised, here's the paper that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. This is the brain scan paper showing that your gray matter remodels when you become a mother, and the lasting changes. The paper is a short one, so if you're interested in reading it. But if you find the terminology too much, well, I broke down the study in this video right here. And with this, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!